Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's SCHOTT Pharmaversity podcast. My name is Yen, and today we will dive into a crucial topic in pharmaceutical development. With the rise of self-administered therapies and the shift from hospital-based treatments to home care, selecting the right primary packaging is more critical than ever. Joining us today is Robert Lindner, Global Product Manager for Cartridges at SCHOTT Pharma, and he will give us insights on how to find the right ready-to-use cartridge for sensitive drugs. Welcome, Robert.
Hi, Jen. Thanks for having me.
So let's start, Robert. My first question to you is, why are ready-to-use cartridges becoming so important for sensitive drug products, such as biologics?
So it's a very good question, Jen. And the point really is that we are seeing a major shift in the industry from intravenous administration in hospitals to subcutaneous injections. And the big reason is that patients can manage these at home. So it's an increase in patient convenience because we are reducing hospital visits. This also improves patient adherence and overall, of course, quality of life if you can do it at home. Second point is that it reduces the costs because you need less professionals, healthcare professionals, to administer the medication. And of course, this is, let's say, this is eased or alleviated by recent advances in drug formulation. So more and more biologics and other sensitive drugs can now be reformulated or formulated to be delivered subcutaneously, also in high concentrations. And this is also where ready-to-use cartridges play a key role because they are a key component to enable these pre-filled devices like auto-injectors or wearable pumps, which makes self-administration easier and safer also for laypersons. And I mean, the big benefit of cartridges is really that they are allowing variable doses as well as multiple doses out of the same container.
Wow, that sounds really great. So seems like we need more than the cartridge to contain the drug product. So which components are needed for a container closure system?
So you're right. The cartridge alone, so the sole glass container, doesn't do the trick. So we need a full container closure system, and typically for a cartridge-based system, this consists, of course, of the cartridge, a serum stopper on the front end, held in place with a crimp cap, and then, of course, a plunger stopper on the back end. And the plunger stopper, as well as the serum stopper, seal off the cartridge, and the plunger stopper then allows movement so that the liquid can be expelled from the cartridge once a cannula is inserted into the front end, right? And that, of course, then helps us in supplying the correct dose to the patient with the correct speed of injection.
And Robert, what would you say are the key factors when selecting a container closure system for a drug?
So when selecting a container closure system, there are several critical considerations. So first of all, of course, it's material compatibility. So we need to ensure that the drug remains stable in contact with the container material. So in this case, the cartridge, but also the elastomer materials of the seals. Then, with regards to material compatibility, we also need to look at extractables and leachables to avoid unwanted substances migrating into the drug over time. Then, of course, we need to look at functional performance. So, for example, the break-loose gliding force, that must be optimized for a smooth injection, and that it, of course, also works over the shelf life of the product without any hiccups. And yeah, of course, as always in the pharmaceutical industry, we need to have regulatory compliance, right? So the whole container closure system and the ready-to-use cartridge must meet the strict requirements from the, for example, FDA or EMEA.
Oh, that is very interesting. So how does material selection impact the cartridge performance?
So let's take one example, the siliconization. So if we look at siliconization, which is a critical process step in glass cartridges, this is really what ensures the smooth plunger movement and the consistent drug delivery. For biologics, however, as they are highly sensitive, excessive or improperly applied silicone oil can really pose a risk of protein aggregation. This has been shown in the literature. And these surface interactions are critical because these free-floating silicone droplets that potentially can migrate into the solution can act as nucleation points, triggering this protein aggregation, and in the end, they can reduce the efficacy or even lead to immunogenic reactions in the patients. So it's really critical to look at these. And if you want to manage that risk, right, because that is what it's all about, manage or mitigate, minimize the risk for this protein aggregation, of course, the first idea that comes to mind is to reduce the total amount of silicone per container, because then we have a lower risk of silicone migrating into the drug formulation. But of course, at the same time, we need to balance that, yeah, because the less silicone we have, the more critical it is to ensure the proper mechanical performance. So what I mean with that is that we need to ensure the mechanical performance. So, for example, a smooth injection force or a smooth gliding force over time. And for this, of course, we need to have a consistent siliconization. And if we use too little silicone, the plunger stopper will not move smoothly, or the needed forces will be too high. So the injection will not start at all because the break loose force is too high. And in order to balance these two risks, we need to look at the siliconization techniques. For cartridges, baked on silicone is really one of the high quality standards that we have out there. And this really helps to create a more uniform and lower silicone migration layer inside the cartridge. And in the end, this helps to maintain the functional performance while at the same time minimizing the risk of protein instability. So this is really crucial to ensure the right balance between drug stability and the smooth injection performance.
Very interesting, Robert. So you also mentioned extractable and leachables. So could you briefly explain them and how their impact on the drug formulation is?
Yeah, sure. So leachables in general are ions that migrate over time from the container wall or the container material into the drug formulation. And extractables are, let's say, ions that are chemically and or physically forced, for example, by using aggressive solvents or high heat to migrate into the solution. So you can think of it as a kind of worst case approach to leachables, right? So you're really doing everything to force these ions into the solution to really assess the worst case. And what these ions do, whether they are extractables or leachables, is that, for example, they can induce shifts in the pH value of the solution, right? So over time, you have ions leaching into the solution, and at some point, the pH is, of the drug formulation is shifted so significantly that they influence the stability of sensitive biologics. So, for example, in the worst case, if you look at peptides or monoclonal antibodies, they could change the conformation of these large proteins, and therefore, of course, we need to select well-characterized materials in order to minimize these risks.
And how can the pharma companies mitigate this risk, in addition to what you just mentioned?
So in order to mitigate these risks, it is absolutely essential to do compatibility testing as early as possible. because this helps pharma companies to avoid costly delays and regulatory hurdles further down the line. And of course, in the end, regulatory bodies want to see this data of drug container interaction with the final drug formulation. But what we at SCHOTT Pharma can support with is providing data and sharing knowledge and information of this type of interaction for specific buffer substances or drug proxies, in order to minimize the risk in the first run, right?
Wow, now having heard a lot of details on the importance of container selection, can you tell us a bit more about how the market is evolving with the shift to home-based drug delivery?
Sure. So from a market perspective, we're currently witnessing a major transformation in drug delivery trends. So as stated in the beginning, we have a huge migration from intravenous to subcutaneous. So new formulation technologies that allow high-dose biologics to be delivered in smaller subcutaneous injections instead of long intravenous infusions. So there we are talking, for example, about hyaluronidase based injections that allow the skin tissue to absorb more volume in a short amount of time. But also wearable injectors and auto injectors are evolving, right? And for these, of course, ready-to-use cartridges are a key enabler because they support large volume and also high viscosity injections. And with this, they also simplify the overall manufacturing and reduce contamination risks because it's really pre-filled, preloaded, delivered to the patient, and he can really administer the drug substance at home, and doesn't need extensive counseling or support from a healthcare professional. And this, of course, drives also the adoption in biologics overall.
Wow, this sounds really like a very great innovation. So, in your opinion, so what should pharma companies prioritize when selecting a ready-to-use cartridge?
So again, I think the most important priorities should be proper material selection. So there we are especially looking at siliconization, but also connected to that is the functional performance. So you want to have very smooth drug delivery, especially for high viscosity biologics. We need to assess regulatory compliance. So we want to select well-characterized materials that align with the regulatory standards. And then, of course, at some point you need to manufacture it. So when you go with ready-to-use pre-sterilized cartridges, this, of course, gives you more flexibility in scaling up the production or even scaling out the production to several manufacturing sites, and of course makes the whole production overall more efficient.
Oh, thank you, Robert. So, what are your final thoughts? What's next for ready-to-use cartridges?
So, in my opinion, the future of ready-to-use cartridges is being shaped on the one hand by standardized dimensions and at the same time having a high chemical and mechanical quality to further improve the drug compatibility. And the big benefit for standardized dimensions, of course, is the compatibility with the increasing amount of wearable drug delivery systems, especially for large volume cartridges. And then, of course, let's not forget efforts with regards to sustainability. So I think we will see a move towards more eco-friendly packaging, while at the same time really improving production efficiency. And if pharma companies integrate these trends early, I think they will be very well positioned for the next generation of biologic therapies.
That was a very interesting talk we had. Robert, thanks a lot for sharing these valuable insights.
My pleasure, Yen, as always. And I think it's an exciting time for pharmaceutical packaging innovation. We see a lot of great products coming to the market. And yeah, as our saying goes, human health matters. That's what we're doing it for in the end.
So if you found today's episode insightful, be sure to subscribe for more discussions on pharmaceutical trends and innovations with our SCHOTT Pharmaversity. Thanks to the audience for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.